Welcome to the next episode of EHO Knows. Now, when I first heard this talk, I was just blown away. Like, what we're about to talk about is the ultimate food poisoning weapon. And we're talking about something that is absolutely everywhere. And I am sure that the problem that we're about to address is absolutely everywhere. But we've finally got one council that was prepared to own the problem and to try and solve the problem. And so this is their journey on how to try and make the ultimate food poisoning beast safe for the general public. So welcome Kylie D'Alton from Waverley Council. Yes, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Now, we've previously done eggs, and so there's a good argument that eggs are the ultimate food poisoning entity. But here we're talking about sushi. What's so good about sushi when it comes to food poisoning?
Well, first of all, can I say the popularity of sushi has just exploded. I don't know about where you live, but around Waverley, there's sushi shops on basically every corner.
Okay.
So many.
So criteria number one, everyone's eating it nowadays. Yep. Okay.
Yeah. And a wide population, like I would say kids love it. Like there's a huge amount of young people also eating it.
Yep. So it's super, super trendy amongst kids, adults. Okay. So everyone's on board.
There's so many other things. There's so many places where the preparation of sushi can go wrong. So perhaps, first of all, that people don't like to eat it cold. They like it about room temperature. They think that the cold rice is a bit crispy, or they don't like it really cold.
Okay, so it's a food that we like to put straight into the danger zone and really get the bacteria.
It's not in the danger zone. Most sushi shops either have a sushi tray or it's being displayed, and it might be cool, but it's not it's not cold enough to keep it safe. And most shops are using the 2 hour, 4 hour rule or some kind. Yeah.
Yes. So sushi trains, they're incredible because you can just watch the same dish come by time and time and time again. And then there's others that just... So if you ever go to a sushi train, you want to sit there for one lap and just make sure that you're not getting something that's been sitting there for way too long. Okay, so everyone's eating it. We love to store it at room temperature. We've got every second place is now making it. And in fact, it's worse than that. Every supermarket feels compelled to be making it. And it could be made fresh, could be made off-site, and it's sitting there. So you can now buy it anywhere. It's manufactured, it's created by almost everyone. Okay.
Yeah. There's a few other things. Most of the products are raw.
Yes.
Some of the products that are cooked, like chicken, aren't reheated before they're sold.
Okay, so let's now take seafood, raw seafood, and let's dump that in and then store it at room temperature. So that's a winner. Okay. Or if we've got chicken, pre-cooked chicken, not necessarily reheated, cut up on a chopping board, bunged into the sushi and left at room temperature. Okay.
Big batches of rice. So we found lots of the big companies are cooking their rice off-site, like at a headquarters, and then shipping them around town. But big batches being stored like that, sometimes under temperature control. But again, they're using the 2 hour, 4 hour rule.
Yes.
It's the rice.
Yeah. And so depending on who's doing it, there's the perception that, it's rice, it's safe, or, yes, it's a potentially hazardous food, needs to be kept, 2 hour, 4 hour rule. And rice is awesome because, let's be serious. When it comes to rice, it's the ultimate in food poisoning. So, once it's contaminated, that's it. It doesn't matter what you're going to do, but we're not going to do anything because we're going to just wrap it up and leave it in room temperature and consume it. Okay, so we're on a roll. Anything else about sushi?
There's a few other methods which go into preparing safe sushi. So some of the others are about the recipes. We have some people using traditional recipes. So they don't actually have a recipe written down about how they acidify the rice. So it might be something that someone knows but isn't written down. That's hard for us to check on.
So Jumping ahead a little bit, once we start talking about walking into, especially the small sushi joints or the places where sushi is just like a little bit of an extra on the side, where do they get their recipes from?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, we do ask that. We need to see their recipe so we know they're acidifying it correctly. So quite often it's just someone, the cook who's not there at the moment makes it, but
Yes.
we're trying to make that change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so recipe may be a traditional recipe, maybe just something off the internet. Yep, so questionable recipes in the first place. Okay, what else about sushi?
One thing that we have found is, which is perhaps our biggest concern, is the discounting of sushi at the end of the day. It's become ingrained into our society that sushi will be put on the counter at the end of the day, very heavily discounted. Kids on the way home from school, parents on the way home from work will get it. It's on the counter. It's not under temperature control. And it might be at the end of the 4 hours. So then people are taking it. They're taking it to the beach. They're taking it home for their kids. The 4 hours is already up. And then it's being fed to potentially a vulnerable population.
And
people expect that.
And so that's really the perfect storm now brewing. So yes, fantastic 2 hour, 4 hour rule. We're doing the compliant thing, and we're selling it for immediate consumption. And then kids are wandering past at the end of the day on the way down to the beach, or mum or dad are going past and going, oh, excellent, I'll grab this. They might take it home, put it in the fridge, but the next day they'll pop it in the lunchbox for the kids. Or you take it down to the beach and you go for a swim, surf, whatever, and 3 or 4 hours later you come back and you have your little bit of sushi.
And 3 to 4 hours now, it's 30 degrees or it's 35 degrees. So we're not talking about a cold climate here right now either.
Fortunately, today it's only 30 degrees. Today's a beautiful day. A couple of days ago, it was 42 degrees. Yeah, so anyone listening in America, apart from Mexico, we don't have problems with snow here. We just have problems with it hitting 40 degrees every summer. But we're tough in Australia. So we've got the perfect. It's portable, and so we can just drop it in the kids' lunchbox, or we can just slip it in our pocket as we head down to the beach or whatever the case may be. So so we've got dodgy rice, dodgy seafood, dodgy chicken being left out while it's in store, being left out while it's being held or whatever. So sushi really is the perfect food poisoning food item. Okay, so what brought it to your attention?
We looked at our complaints. We know anecdotally that sushi shops were overrepresented. But when we did our numbers, we could tell that our sushi shops weren't performing as well as they should be. And the complaints were just too many complaints. We found there's a lot of complicated work for people about measuring pH. And that's really where they were starting to go wrong. The pH and using the 2 hour, 4 hour rule, that's where we could see the sushi shops really overrepresented in areas of non-compliance.
Yeah. Okay, and to be really, really clear here, we know that your particular council area just has dodgy restaurants. So this is a problem that is 100% isolated to your area. And so how big a problem, so we haven't got the stats. Everything that we're about to talk about right now, totally made up on the spot, like all good stats should be. How big a problem do you think it is nationally?
It's unknown. And I think that's a problem with foodborne illness. Most people, when they get sick, they blame the last thing they ate or the last time they went out. People don't necessarily know the source of their illnesses. So we just need to be more careful. I think because there's a lot of work that we can do and other councils can do with sushi to ensure there's a higher level of compliance.
I guess also sushi is slightly different to if you go and have a bulk prepared dish at a restaurant and a whole bunch of people suddenly get sick. But these really are just little time bombs. And so you've just got a couple here that have been left until the end of the day. And someone might eat one that day or they might eat it the next day. And so you're just going to have all these little pockets of food poisoning outbreaks as opposed to one massive outbreak where you can do cause and effect.
That's true.
Combined with the fact that you're talking about lots of little places. So it's just a small problem, just bubbling away and just hitting individuals all over the place. So why do we even eat sushi? How do we make sushi safe?
There's lots of ways that we can make sushi safe. We need to really put all those controls in place to make sure that from the rice to the sushi to the hygiene to the pH acidification of the rice to good record keeping, putting all of those things in place can mean that the sushi can be a very safe product. We have plenty of shops which were perfect. It can be done. It's not impossible. It just requires education, compliance, enforcement, and we found education. Compliance wasn't working for us. We also knew that. We had one particular food shop which was giving us some grief. About 3 years ago, it received 3 or 4 pins. The year after that, it received a full prohibition order. And we weren't getting any better. So what we did is try to open the communication through this program. We went through the inspections very slowly with them, measuring pH, all that education. Rather than the threats, we were talking, we were opening the communication, and now you wouldn't believe it. It's a 5-star sushi shop. Same staff, same owner. We haven't had to go anywhere near a pin, improvement notice, prohibition. Their education worked. And it was about taking the time and rather than just taking that strict compliance action and taking that education and being, it's kindness. It's not necessarily about not issuing those fines. It's about spending some time with them, making sure that they've got the guidelines in their own language and that they have what it takes to comply with the guidelines.
Yeah. So if this is the one that you talked about in your talk, I know when you first stepped in, what were they like?
They were terrible. I mean, we found pH records that had been completed for the day. So I was there at like 8 o'clock. I'm like, why have you completed your records already? Like, you've made it up.
Yeah.
So that could pass for some people. If I went later in the day, I might have been fine. So they were dodging their records. I don't know why they were doing that. Their pH meter looked disgusting. So, and I mean, they can try clean it, but we need to say, you need to set a new path here. You need a new pH meter. We need to get your records reset from the start. And they also started using a sticker system, which for their 2-hour, 4-hour, rather than a colour, it actually stamped the date that it was put out, which is a bit different to most sushi shops. But it's what they needed to comply. They were getting lost in colours and things like that.
Yes. So they know what they're meant to do, but they're dodging it. Personally, how did they come across?
Well, can I say that they have told me that they used to be afraid of us. So they didn't like us being there. And so they came across defensive, worried. So we just tried to break that barrier where it wasn't necessarily a fear of the EHO, but an EHO is someone you can go to for advice and for education and for assistance, which can help you improve your food shop rather than being afraid and hiding and trying to dodgy your records. You can be open. If the pH wasn't right, you add your vinegar and fix up your records. Or if you're not sure where it should be, you can speak to your EHO and we can help you through it.
Yes. Well, let's go. Are we talking about migrant or are we talking about someone where language isn't a barrier?
Language is definitely a barrier and it has been with most of our sushi shops. So that's why it was good to not necessarily have the guidelines in different languages because it's not available in a wide range of languages. But when we did need to have information provided in different languages, for example, about sanitization, the 2-hour, 4-hour, we were able to get those in different languages. And in fact, with some shops, we laminated them, hand them to them, and really walk them through the steps, which isn't something we would think that we have to do. It's up to them to comply. But after a couple of years with some of these shop owners, we knew that we had to make the extra effort to get compliance.
Yeah. And I think what's really cool here is that you could just turn around and say it's their problem. We can just come in with a big stick and force them to fix it. But you just turned around and said, no, this is a community problem. And so as a community, you need to address it. And so educate, equip. And now, did you have to pull the big stick out at any stage? You know, you're going through this nice process. Did you have to play bad cop?
We didn't through this program. We had a year or so ago, and that's really why we were trying to focus on education quite heavy. Because since we've had one shop that we've had to issue an infringement to, so it doesn't work with everyone, and owners change, and there's different issues in different shops. But it's certainly achieved a higher level of compliance than what we had before.
And so you've mentioned pH, and in fact, I love the pH point because for me, I step into a sushi place now, and I always just ask one question, and the answer to that question will determine whether or not I'll just walk out straight away. And it's simply, what is the pH of your rice? And what's really cool, what I love about that question is there's one unacceptable answer, which is, I don't know, in which case you're just going, no, I'm out of here because it's obviously not on the radar. My favourite sushi place just around the corner, she said, I don't know, we write it over there. Do you want me to go check? I'm going, sweet, you're monitoring pH and you know what I'm talking about and you know where to find the answer. And so you go, that's awesome. What's the correct answer, by the way?
4.6.
Okay. And there's, great pH meters. Actually, here's a good question. pH meters. They range from, I think, around about $50 upwards to hundreds of dollars. From a restaurant's point of view, what should they be having in store?
They need to have a pH meter. Or we don't tell them what brand or what variety. But perhaps even more importantly, they need to keep it clean.
Yes.
And they need to be able to calibrate it. So we had ones which are gross and messy and disgusting, and that was a huge problem.
So just to double down on, hey, we've got the perfect vessel for you to inject bacteria into, and now we've got the perfect tool for you to be able to take it from here and shove it in there. Okay, cool. So yeah.
It was soil. They didn't even have, they just bought something. They had it and they weren't even using it. So perhaps if they wave something around quick enough, the EH will be right. Yeah, check, sure, you've got it. But we need to see it in action and make sure it's actually going to be useful for sushi.
Okay, so it needs to be clean and it can't be wrapped in the original plastic. Okay, so pH sushi, the environment for preparing. So here's an interesting one because now you've got raw fish that's being cut up and prepared, but you've also then got rice and preparation for there. How much do you see cross-contamination on chopping boards and the like?
Yeah, I mean, I think that can occur. It wasn't the predominant issue that I found. Perhaps what we saw more often was quite typical in food shops with chopping boards that can't be sanitized. We used sanitizer test strips during this project, and there wasn't too big of an issue regarding that. They were sanitizing and it was working.
Yeah.
But there were plenty of chopping boards that needed to just be replaced.
Yes.
That's common. We find that in all of our food shops. Okay.
pH, cleanliness, anything else that a restaurant should be doing and just aren't doing.
The 2-hour, 4-hour with sushi shops is just a standout. I mean, if we know they're not going to keep it under temperature control, they have to be using the 2-hour, 4-hour precisely. So have good records about how they use, what's the 4-hour they're really using. But they need to, we've had places who had stickers and the pink kind of looked like the red. You couldn't tell which one. And then they're like, oh, well, I used different stickers today. It's nice to keep track of how long that food's been out. Or sometimes I make big batches and put them all the same sticker, even though they took 40 minutes.
Yes.
The whole stack. The 2-hour, 4-hour needs to be applied accurately.
Yes.
We're not messing around. We're not joking. It's not approximate. It's not like putting a pink or red sticker on. It needs to be precise, as it can be.
Anything else?
I think that the main thing we found with our sushi project is we opened ourselves with the communication. We gave them the opportunity to come to us. But we allow all food shops to, ask questions. But by putting the invitation out there, we did have food shops come and say to us and have questions and talk about the conversation about how sushi is made or transported. And that's wonderful because it's really there to a high level of compliance. And that sushi or any kind of food shops, just opening up that communication was key.
Yes. Okay, so we've now got the perfect weapon, sushi. We know what we're meant to do, and so you've got the education resources and everything. But you also then went one step further and or do we put this out there? You modified scores on doors. So, what were the changes? What did you add?
We didn't modify scores on doors. We modified our FPAR,
Yes.
Food Promise Assessment Report. And can I say there's kind of a component into that, which other councils might face, is that we had EHOs in our team who'd never inspected sushi before. They'd never used a pH meter. We didn't have standard operating procedures for the pH meter. So who knows when it was calibrated or how it was cleaned or... So we had these internal processes that we needed to update to make sure that we could communicate and update our food shops the best way possible. And that started with upskilling our EHOs.
Yeah.
It started with getting SOPs in place and the FPAR.
So just to stop there, that's a really interesting question just to be asking all our listeners as to, it's one thing to be pointing the finger at all these restaurants and saying, hey, are you doing the right thing? But then there's the skill gap with every single specialty food that comes along. Are you actually internally equipped? And so it's just absolutely awesome. One, to identify it, and then two, to stand up in public and say, hey guys, we dropped the ball on this. We needed to start in-house and educate ourselves, get the skills necessary so that all of our inspectors stepping out into these places were equipped. So yeah, that's totally awesome. Okay, so education in-house.
So say with the FPAR, we added specific sushi questions which were missing before. So we've asked about whether they're keeping their records, what the pH was, whether they had skills and knowledge specific to sushi. Questions that really came from the New South Wales Food Authority guidelines for the preparation of sushi. But it meant when the officer was out there, they've got all those cues to ask the right questions specific to sushi.
Yes. Off the top of your head, can you remember what they are? Now we're putting you to the test. Here, let me just...
I do have it in front of me, whether the pH meter is available, working correctly
In exam condition, whether they can demonstrate the use of the pH meter. And so we test the sushi as well as they do on the spot. So whether those results are the same.
Yes.
Whether the rice is acidified, the recipe's known, whether the rice, when's the rice discarded, how long is the rice kept for, if it's not acidified, if it's refrigerated, and temperature control questions, and whether they've got an effective system for the 2-hour, 4-hour.
Yes.
So that's most of the questions.
Which is everything that we've been talking about. So from that point of view, you're now stepping in and you've now got additional points that they can lose. So anyone who's not familiar with the scores on doors system, don't watch my scathing videos on it. But basically the way it works is that if you comply with the standards, you're going to get 5 stars. And then as you screw things up, you lose points. And once you hit a threshold, you go down to 4 stars. And once you go past another threshold, you go down to 3 stars. So by adding more questions to it, you're just making it easier for restaurants and cafes to go backwards and drop from 5-star to 4 to 3-star. And
potentially, yeah.
So first time round, you're going around testing these restaurants. how bad is it? Are they losing points left, right, and centre, or what was it like?
We did our education at the start. So we compared those inspection results to results before the inspection. So there were different FPARs.
Yes.
So it's not fair to compare. And at that stage, we also weren't using scores on doors. So it wasn't something they had a huge awareness. A lot of food shops weren't even concerned about how many stars they had. But compliance now is better. We've seen that. So it has led to a greater level of compliance without getting into too much details about how many stars on the FPAR. But like I said, we've had restaurants that have been fined 3-4 times for prohibition order, and now they're 5 stars.
Yes.
So that kind of result and it's fantastic. It hasn't happened like that across the board, but the lift has been upwards.
Yes. And so in terms of, I think it's a really fascinating concept of, if you're a standard restaurant, here's the standard FPAR. But wait a minute, because you're putting your hand up and saying, hey, we want to do this, here's an additional set of requirements. And so it would be really interesting. Do you think New South Wales would be bold enough to turn around and start going, okay, here's optional ones for any place that prepares sushi, or any of the other sort of high risk foods?
I don't know if the impact is great enough than that. And considering that all places that make sushi receive their same FPAR, so they're all rated the same. So I don't know if it would have that greater impact.
But you've identified, just things like testing pH and some of the other things like cross-contamination. You'd argue that, cross-contamination rule applies to thermometers, pH meters. They're the only two I can think of off the top of my head, but anything that's used for testing and measuring needs to be cleaned in between. And so really that should just be in the FPAR standard anyway. On top of cross-contamination in your mixers or your knives or whatever the case may be. So there's some that maybe should have been there in the first place. But then pH.
It's like temperature control is in there,
yes,
but it's just triggering you to go a bit deeper than that. Yeah.
So this now, we're 2 years down the line since you first did it?
Yeah.
And so we're another summer in. Have you been back to social media? Are you noticing a difference in what's happening?
We have noticed a difference, and that is an upwards tick. It is better. Those food shops in the main have been able to hold that high level of compliance. Of course, we've got a couple of outliers like we do, all those shops that have changed hands. But there's also that one point I haven't mentioned before is that when we started the project, we did a search on everyone who was selling sushi in our local government area. There were lots of places which didn't sell sushi during the day. So when we did our normal inspections, we didn't even know they were selling sushi.
Yes.
We've searched or gone on menu log, all those kind of things. We've found they're cooking about sushi. So it's also led to us to dig deeper into the food they're actually preparing rather than what we just see or what they just own up to during the day. So we actually have more sushi premises than we actually realised, because we didn't know some of them they weren't owning up to, or they didn't have it on display during our inspections. So we were never checking their records.
Yes.
Now we are. So that's another big plus from this project. We really nutted down and found out all those places that are selling sushi.
Yes. So unless it's there in front of you, you can't really tell, but you need to ask the question. And if you don't ask the question, then it's never going to be on the radar in the first place.
And sometimes they're cafes, like you don't know, like you could ask every
food shop we go to, but some of them honestly caught us by surprise. We had a cafe that was selling sushi at night time. They were full-on sushi, Japanese-inspired at night time. We hadn't picked that up in our inspection, but it's also because they hadn't given us any clues. There was nothing in the fridge that had, informed us of that. So it wasn't until we dug a bit deeper and started talking in this education campaign specifically about sushi that we became aware of it.
So when you say there's nothing, you open the fridge and so you're basically saying they're not preparing the rice during the day. You're not seeing all the, I don't know, whatever the classic signs are for So they'd be preparing it at the end of the day or bringing it in or preparing it off-site and bringing it in.
Yeah, I mean, there was no huge amount of places that were doing it, but they were there. And I think that's also where there's opportunity for things to go wrong, because they're not necessarily making a huge amount of sushi. They might not have the expertise, or they might just think it might complement the menu well. So I think that it's important to find out those shops and make sure they are compliant with the guidelines.
Yeah. Okay. Tangent. Markets. Sushi in markets. Ticking time bomb?
I think so. I mean, I haven't seen any, and we would, if we saw them, we would be on inspecting them the same as every sushi shop, but that would be a big concern. Yeah, we would want to be inspecting that.
And then I feel like just asking sushi in supermarkets, but we will just leave that one alone. Okay.
That's where I go. That's where I go for my sushi, because I know, I feel like they're
In some stores, there is a higher level of regulation over that. So I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing.
Okay. So where I am, there's 2 supermarkets, and one of them makes it fresh in store, and the other one has it made off-site and brought in. And so I know when it's being made, and then I also know when it's still there, but arguably it's under temperature control much better than it is in a small place. And so it's just really just interesting seeing it sitting there. And so you go the safer bet of saying, yes, go for the supermarket. Yes. Okay.
I'm okay with it. Yeah, I'm okay with it. I think the temperature control is better. We don't see the sushi trains. We don't see, I don't want to get anyone into trouble, but I don't see the dodging of records that I've seen at smaller stores. I think their record keeping, perhaps it's because required by corporate, I see their record keeping as being better.
Yes. Okay. I'll reassess. I still just like going to the local joint. There's nothing like the one where they're flame grilling the tuna on top, and you get it warm and crispy, and that's just magical. I should just put an ad in for them and be done with it.
And I would always recommend people get it in the mornings. I think, like, this is what I tell my own kids.
Just across the board, no matter where they're shopping. Get sushi morning or lunch. Because then you would expect then for it to be freshly prepared and hasn't been sitting at a temperature control for 4+ hours.
Yes. And then any parents who are listening to the podcast, sushi in a lunchbox.
Make sure it's cold. Make sure you've bought it fresh and it hasn't been sitting at room temperature.
And don't buy it on special and then just leave it for a couple of days and then bung it in the lunchbox. Yeah, schools, it's changed so much. Back when I was a child, we used to have sandwiches or whatever, and I'm in Wagga. And so in the middle of the day, there were some sandwiches I just pulled out and they were green. Like, life was having a ball in the lunchbox back then. But, now having had my own kids, and I know, put the ice back in the bag. And so things have improved. But then at the same time, we'd go to the school and the school bags are then hanging outside in the sun, and you're going, well, that's just making it more interesting.
Can I tell you, I actually
found this lunchbox, which I bought for all 3 of my kids, and you put the whole lunchbox as an ice pack and you put it in the freezer, and then you get it out when it's ready to go into the school bag. So you pack it all, put it in the school bag. It's a little bit heavier because the whole thing is like an ice pack. But they brought the food home and it's still been like 4 degrees. And I'm like so impressed that my kids will not be using any other kind of lunchbox.
Yes. There you go. Another plug for some other product, but yeah. Okay. So just to summarize, sushi, the ultimate food poisoning entity. One day we'll actually do an episode on, which one actually is, but for today we'll make the claim that sushi is the ultimate. It can be done safely, pH control, cross-contamination. Most importantly, time and temperature, just make sure that, it's kept cool, minimize time, whatever. So we know how to do it right. Restaurants, cafes, you discovered lack of education or education but dodging up results, and a huge range of minor problems that culminated in, you just don't want to be eating sushi, especially at the end of the day. But a dedicated program of education, encouragement, but then verifying stuff, internal training, and just focused on making sure that sushi is safe to eat. And you saw the results, and you're seeing the results. So congratulations. That's absolutely awesome. I'd love to hear comments, trying to engage the community here. What are you finding in your local community in terms of sushi? Are you up to scratch? Can you be doing it better? And we'll go controversial. What is the most dangerous food that you think's out there? Is there a good contender against sushi? Arguably eggs were, but we've done so much to change eggs. And I'd love to see that what you've done will now change what we do with sushi and basically bring us up into the 21st century. I think we covered everything. Any last minute tips for EHOs?
Regarding sushi, I would speak to your staff about their skills. If someone's not sure about something, encourage them to open up and upskill. We can always refresh our skills, and talking, communicating, networking is the best way to do that.
Awesome. Thank you, Kylie. We had a lot of effort trying to get this happening, lots of technical stuff. And so Kylie and all my previous guests and all my future guests really, really appreciate the perseverance and the effort to try and get the permission in the first place and all of that. So thank you, Kylie, for persevering. And this is an awesome episode. I love it. So thanks a lot. Have you back one day.
Thank you. Thanks so much.